Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest in the Leadership Lounge, Leadership Coaching Lounge, I beg your pardon, podcast series. And today I am joined by Vanessa Camenzuli. And rather than me go into exactly what it is you do, Vanessa, perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself to everyone.
So, hi everyone. Thanks for having me, Kelly. So, I am an employer brand and communication strategist. I'm sure we're going to delve into that
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
So, maybe we should stop at that as a kind of title and welcome.
Great. I've been thinking about this podcast a lot. I've been looking forward to it. And from my own point of view, I guess, I'd love to understand your journey from where it started in this interest in employee branding and communications, where it's taken to you in your career, because I know you were employed for a period of time and now going into working for client work and the kind of work that you're doing. And that's quite a lot, it's quite a big question to ask, but if you wouldn't mind, that'd be really helpful, I think.
Yes, we can kick off and then just obviously interject when you like.
Hmm.
So, I actually am a psychology graduate,
Okay.
and prior to that, I was into teaching. So, I started teaching singing at the age of 17.
Hmm.
So I always thought that potentially I might get into teaching, but then as things turned out, I did have a little bit of an experience of teaching in a primary school. And I said, oh my God, it feels like this is it. Like
Mm.
you start as a teacher. I'm sure it's not like that, but
Mm.
it just felt that I needed to see change. And this was also the reason why I never got into clinical or counseling psychology, because I'm a person that wants, I believe people can move on and do it. And obviously, as a coach, you have that ability to be a
Absolutely.
little bit more challenging.
Mhm.
But as a therapist, you are really going with the client. So it's all been about the human,
Mm.
let's say. But as I through my university course, I actually had a placement at
Mm.
the Western with the HR team, and
Okay.
that was my first experience of saying, "Ooh, maybe working in an office isn't too bad."
Mm.
After all, and they were great. I did actually, in the past, they used to have these open days before
Mm.
summer, and they actually allowed me to facilitate the whole thing like
Wow.
crazy. Obviously, my theater experience helped me with
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
So once that my university kind of I graduated, the options for someone in junior HR are very limited. You're either an HR administrator, kill me now, for my type of personality, or you get into recruitment, which for me, I could immediately tell it again, it wasn't really for me. And I actually landed myself a job in marketing and communications.
Okay.
So we were a company of three people. It's
Hmm.
quite funny how my career started in a company of three people and my employed career ended in a company of 18,000 people.
Wow.
It's yeah, quite a journey. And over there, again, always taking the human perspective,
Mm.
I basically learned everything I need to know about communications and marketing. It was the best schooling. I don't think any degree could
Hmm.
have, or any formal education, let's say, could have helped me with this. Okay, I did my digital marketing diploma. Taught myself Photoshop and did a little bit of a course. But we did everything from events to taught ourselves social media. So all that kind of pure marketing, not
Hmm.
from a product perspective. It wasn't the kind of number crunching of marketing, but it was more the kind of communication side of marketing.
Hmm.
But and then I felt, three people, I really did feel I needed something a bit more. And I joined Vodafone, and the role there was quite internal facing. So although I was doing all this external side, it was the first time that I realized, oh, I've learned all of this about external communications and marketing, but now actually I'm practicing it internally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I could tell that this was my love,
Mm.
really.
Mm.
And I could tell that by using a little bit of my kind of experience from teaching and developing people and my communications, actually, this was a concoction, a little bit like a chocolate truffle, um, uh, because I could see that I was bringing people on a journey. I was running a foundation program that, let's say, wasn't very favored internally. So I had to flip
Mm.
that.
Mm. Mm.
So anyway, then just to cut through, all my roles started becoming more internal facing.
Hmm.
I then, after that, had a very pure talent management role in consultancy.
Hmm.
And then after that, I thought it was best for me to just start business psychology. It kind of business psychology found me.
Mm.
And in that kind of period, I also landed my first official employer brand, let's say, assignment.
Hmm.
I was asked to, I was in a communications team for a local conglomerate where they
Hmm.
had McDonald's, Apple,
Mm.
engineering, like quite,
Mm.
quite a concoction.
Mm.
And that was a great experience. But my pain in that role
Mm.
was that we created the employer brand from a pure marketing and communications lens.
Mm. Mm.
So at no point did we have that relationship with HR.
Mm. So it's done completely on its own, completely separate.
It was a pure communications exercise. So we came up with the best language, we created the career site, we
Mm.
created the identity, we wrote the communications guide
Hmm.
book, we created videos, we created testimonials. So it's textbook
Mm.
employer branding,
Yeah.
but without a link or
Mm.
that symbiotic relationship, like
Mm.
I like to say,
Mm.
with the organizational culture.
Right. Okay. I'll be interested.
And
Sorry.
yeah,
I
so
mean,
that was my kind of wake-up call
yeah, yeah.
that this is not the way I want to do. So then the business psychology kind of education
Mm.
gave me the understanding of what an HR function is like, not
Hmm.
obviously the employment law and or let's say the administration of an HR team, but
Hmm.
performance, employee engagement, recruitment. So it kind of came full circle, and then this kind of took me up to the point where I landed the first, I think it was actually Malta's first purely employer brand and
Hmm.
communications role with Evolution.
Oh, right. Okay. Huge company.
Yeah, I
And
said
how did
from
you?
three
So I'm
to
interested to understand, sort of going from that conglomerate, if you like, about working in complete isolation from HR and not thinking about culture, to then working for a very large organization. And clearly, the first, I don't know if this is true, but for your first role working purely in the specialty that you have now, what did you notice that was different with such a large international firm, their focus?
the main difference was, I would say, the stakeholder management
Okay. Hmm. And
side
how did
of
that present
things.
itself?
Well, you become an expert in stakeholder management in reality.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I think a lot of one's success, especially in rolling out certain things like employer branding related work.
Mm.
And later on, I moved on to a pure, let's say, talent management role, although there was a lot of HR communications in that role.
Mm.
You need to learn who your stakeholders are
Mm.
and really and truly become a real business partner to
Mm.
them,
Mm.
not a business partner that wants to do things the way they want to do things.
Mm.
You need to become a business, you need to know your subject so much
Mm.
that you are able to mold it in a
Hmm.
way that's going to serve your internal client.
Right.
I think that is the biggest difference that I
Mm.
felt from my previous roles that were also client facing, some of
Mm.
them,
Mm.
to this role in such a large organization with so many business leaders who were my internal clients.
It's really interesting listening to you in that your experience is not only from the technical expertise and the technical training, if you will, around psychology and organizational psychology and everything else you did in between, but it's also that evolution that you, no pun intended, it's also that evolution you went through in your career from working for very small enterprises through to much bigger and then enormous global enterprises. And I wonder for you, if you fast forward now for me into moving into your own business and how that all that experience has translated into how that helps you to work with different size organizations, different sectors of organizations to help them develop and work effectively around their employee branding.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the pivotal, I think, moment for this, what consolidated it was also my coaching training.
Yeah.
So although I was doing these things in practice, I was empathizing, I was understanding, I knew my subject enough to be able to mold it.
Hmm.
Getting that formal training in coaching
Hmm.
just helped me. It just took me on another level. So whereas I was able to deal, for example, with the head of operations,
Hmm.
fast forward to the coaching, I could deal with the CFO, right, or
Yes.
with the CEO. So I think there one has to mention this element. And I always encourage, even now that I'm delivering my own accredited program in employer branding
Mm.
to HR and marketing professionals, this
Mm.
is always my message that coaching skills is going to differentiate you
Yeah.
a lot. So I think that's one point. But what this allows me to do is to be truly compassionate.
Mm.
I never enter an organization with judgment.
Hmm.
None of these leaders that I'm working with have become a leader because they are the best people managers, let's say, or the people leaders. They
Hmm.
are mostly there because they are subject matter experts.
Hmm.
So when I'm dealing with a leader, this is my thought, and I am showing them the way. I'm
Mm.
not telling them how dare they to not think about their reputation as an employer,
Mm.
or how dare they not communicate to their teams more than once a year at the end of year.
Hmm.
I'm helping them understand the risk of not doing it.
I love that. And I think it really speaks clearly to me, being an executive coach. I think that those skills about understanding how you take your expertise and then refine it into a message that's going to help somebody that's driving the business or sitting at the senior level in the business,
Yes.
that's the subject matter expert, how you can then refine your messaging to them to help them understand
Yeah,
the risk and therefore where the value is in adopting an
exactly.
approach which is internally focused, but also externally
Yes.
clearly sells a story, I guess,
Yes.
about who
Yes.
they are.
Yes, but I have to say that this is all through practice
Mm.
and it's a journey. I was faced with a lot of for those who don't know, Evolution was growing with 1,000 people a month.
Mm.
From the time I was there, I joined, we were 3,500 people.
Mm.
By the time I left, we were 18,000. And then
Wow.
when I continued as a consultant, it was up to 20 plus
Wow.
thousand. So you need it's only practice, right?
Mm.
So even when I'm dealing with HR and marketing professionals, I am compassionate. There is very, very little employer brand formal training
Mm.
out there.
Mm.
So how can I expect a CHRO
Absolutely. Mm.
to understand communications?
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah. Which I guess gives you a great opportunity to be able to have that longevity of relationship with your clients. And if I may, I'd really like to understand, from your experience working with different clients, what does a project look like for you? What are the phases? How long does it last? What's the follow-up, etc.?
Yeah. So usually I would enter and start by exploring the organization. I always say I need to understand the DNA of
Hmm.
an organization.
Mm.
And whilst, yes, leaders and HR and marketing would have quite a good understanding because they are employees,
Mm. Mm.
they cannot have an objective view on the
Bias.
DNA
Mm.
of the organization.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, what I've learned is that they don't even see the strengths.
Right.
Because my role is not to point out the flaws.
Mm.
Every family, like every organization, is dysfunctional.
Hmm.
But every family, like every organization, has their strengths. So my role is to find out the strengths. And it's through the strengths that we're going to come up with our employer brand position.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we can use a fancy word, we can call it EVP,
Mm.
but without that in-depth discovery phase,
Mm.
where I am talking to different sections of the organization, where I'm looking at the data, both qualitative and quantitative data,
Mm.
then there's no way that we can really come up with this solid articulation
Yeah.
of who the organization is and why someone should join.
Right. And it's amazing. Do you know what? I'm sitting back in my chair thinking that it's kind of staggering, isn't it? That there may be businesses out there that don't go through this refined, defined process in order to get to that point you're describing. Because I think often with businesses, especially as they grow at a pace, there's a lack of focus on actually how have we achieved this? What are we doing? How are we retaining people? Who's leaving? Why are they leaving?
Yeah.
What does it mean internally for people that are part of the DNA, as you describe it?
Yeah.
And what other strands of DNA are there out there that we want to encourage to come back into what it is
Yeah.
we're wanting to achieve
Yeah.
in business?
Yeah. The truth is that without this employer brand position, employer brand narrative, how are you directing your efforts
Yeah.
to attract, engage, and
Mm,
retain?
mm,
How are you showing your strengths? How are you building your brand? You
yeah.
can't be known for everything, and you
Mm,
can't be the employer for everyone. So
yeah.
if you don't know the employee that thrives in your organization,
Hmm.
what are you directing your efforts to? Are you just picking out trends that are coming around and putting some form of minestrone with random ingredients? Or have you carefully curated the ingredients
Yeah.
for your soup, which
Yeah.
is, by the way, your soup,
Yeah.
your recipe?
Hmm. I love that metaphor. I really love that metaphor.
Yeah,
And so I wonder then, if you think about every client will be different. If you think about the process, I'm really intrigued to understand for you from when you first step in and you start that kind of positive inquiry about the organization, the DNA, the
yeah,
people, you look at qualitative and quantitative data, you start to have those conversations with the senior level, and I guess you work through the organization as well. What's the time frame for you to be able to do a really meaningful piece of work that your client is committed to want to take and then continue working with?
yeah. So obviously, there are always some, let's say, limitations, even just coming up. So this discovery process where it serves two purposes. The
Mm,
discovery serves the purpose of coming up with that employer brand narrative and position.
hmm.
And then it serves to come up with clear actions
Hmm.
on how the organization can attract, engage, and retain.
Hmm.
So at times, the organization feels like, okay, we need to take take this in
Hmm.
because, it's like I'm putting them up against a mirror.
Sure,
And
yeah.
they are also quite surprised at the level of depth
Mm,
that one can gain,
hmm.
the depth of the understanding of the organization. Obviously, that's where my expertise come in. It's not because I've conducted a focus group, it's because what I've made of
Mm,
those focus groups and all those things. So at times they say, let's pause here for a bit, and
mm,
then they come come back to me.
hmm.
But in reality, I would say that there is this part, the first part would be maybe 8 weeks,
Hmm.
depending on obviously the organization and the pace they're working at. And
Hmm.
then the second part is where we say, okay, how are we going to start embedding
Mm,
this narrative?
yeah.
And again, depending on the size of the organization, but anything less than 6 months
Mm.
is not going to yield much.
That
And
that's
I would say that I am quite strict
mm,
with at least getting to the part that we're working with the leaders. So my first step after coming up with this narrative is not the campaigns. It's
mm,
not the external part is last. And they recognize this.
yeah.
They recognize this. So usually what is followed after we come up with this is a wonderful chat with the C-suite team.
I think it's a great way of framing it. I've got a question for you. So it's really interesting, isn't it? I'm very confident in saying this that you're going into a potential client with this narrative about what the process looks like, the time investment that looks like for them, and they're likely going to be speaking to other people that position themselves doing the same kind of work that you do, Vanessa. And my sense would be that they'd probably go and saying, "Oh no, it's 2 weeks work and we can get it done for you." How do you, as a businesswoman, how do you deal with that? Because that must be quite a challenge because companies work at a pace. Uh, And I just wonder, I wonder how that feels for you. How do you deal with that?
So when I decided to kick off
Mm,
my freelance, and the real motivation for me to go freelance was not that I wasn't happy at
mm,
Evolution. I mean, I still love everyone there. We have a fantastic relationship.
mm.
But I had been in a role that I could only influence the internal part of things with
Right.
no influence to the external message.
Mm, mm,
And
mm,
it was eating me inside
mm,
because we were doing some amazing things. But because of the size of the organization, you obviously didn't have one person that was dealing with the internal and the external side of
mm,
building the employer reputation.
mm,
So I am adamant to choose and work with clients
mm,
that understand this wonderful relationship
mm,
between this internal culture and how you really build brand ambassadors
mm,
to then end up attracting the right people. Now, in my short experience, I
mm,
have found that even when I have clients that come to me and are asking me for a campaign because
mm,
they want people, they want more CVs or they want to be known more,
mm.
maybe thanks to those stakeholder skills that I've learned in a very tough environment,
Yes.
I somehow we end up doing this whole journey.
Yeah.
But yes, the truth is that there are organizations that want to tackle it purely from a brand
Mm,
perspective and an external communications perspective.
mm,
There was an instance where I needed to, let's say, not continue with some relationships because
yeah.
of this. But I think it was a mutual understanding
Mm,
where it depends what results one wants. And sometimes businesses need to just have, or they kind of evaluate the risks
mm,
on their own, and they feel they need to have that external push.
yeah. Yeah.
Or else, for example, I had a case where they felt that coming up with their mission, vision, and values from the inside out wasn't
Mm,
going to work for them.
mm,
So, and then again, for me, it's very difficult with my knowledge and everything to be able to put my name in that because I feel that if you'd like to come up with your mission, vision, and values from a very creative standpoint only,
mm,
maybe there are actually better people to do that because although I do write and I throughout my career I've had to write and I've done content,
mm,
a client comes to me not because of my writing skills. A
mm,
client comes to me because I'm able to find that sweet spot
mm,
between their aspirational mission, vision, and values and employer brand narrative and but meet them where they're at.
yeah.
Right. So when we are coming up with this narrative, or if we're coming up with a mission, vision, and values, it takes a lot of expertise to
Mm,
find that sweet spot,
mm, mm.
which is aspirational and using language that is true to the organization.
I think, the thing I've heard clearly in this, which I hope you feel proud of, is that at this phase in your career, going as a consultant, I've been doing this for 20 years now. I think you should feel really proud about the fact that you're totally aligned with your internal values about who it is that's right and not right for you to work with. And that takes a strength of character. In my experience, like I said, it's taken me a lot longer than it took you, let me tell you,
Yeah.
to get to that point where I felt comfortable about who, and it's okay. There might be some organizations I'm just not the right fit, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But it takes time to get to that space, and I think that you having that authenticity about who it is you are, who you are professionally, and how you want to work professionally, I think that's really great. And I think that brings a huge amount of value to those clients that you engage with and that you build that partnership with because it is partnership. It is
Yeah.
about
This
what
is
the
it.
long-term vision look like. It's not about Vanessa turns up for 6 months or 8 months and then that's it. There is a need to revisit because as with everything that evolves over time, that once again, that word evolution, there may be an evolution, there may be a shift, a change in nuance that needs to be brought in. And that's where having those long-term relationships really works for the client and also works for you.
Yes. Look, this was a promise that I made to myself. I
Mm,
wasn't forced into freelancing.
mm,
So for me, enjoying and being able to really, I don't know, enjoy this intellectual freedom. I
Hmm.
think this is what I often speak about.
Yeah.
This intellectual freedom. I am doing gymnastics with my expertise,
Hmm.
working with so many different industries. That's another thing that I am very appreciative of.
Mm.
You know, I'm working with telecoms, with insurance, I've worked with manufacturing, I've worked with a fintech company, I've worked with companies of 50 people, companies of 300, 400 people.
Mm.
And this is the beauty of being freelance. Of course, it comes with a lot of challenge.
Hmm.
And I am back to your point about kind of how do you navigate clients that want to do
Mm.
a quick job, et cetera, et cetera. I am very cognizant of the fact that I have no digital media stats to
Mm.
go to my clients with to tell them how great my work has been
Not
with them.
yet, but yes,
So unless they truly believe in the journey that I'm taking them on and
absolutely.
the outcomes that they will see at some point,
Mm. Mm.
then we can't work together because I genuinely do not have a
Mm.
hard piece of data, or at least one, because obviously we will start seeing a couple of numbers
Mm.
changing
Hmm.
to, but it's not going to take 6 months to see those numbers
It's not that
changing.
before we came on this podcast, you and I were having a chat, and one of the things I loved hearing, and I love hearing this about all entrepreneurs, is you were saying to me, I was expecting Q4 to be a little bit quieter in December, and you said it's not. You've got people that are coming back to you after working freelance for I don't know how long now. But that story about people coming back wanting more of you professionally, that's a really astonishing stat. And also it's the one that will help you to stand out because you are already finding those clients wanting to come back and engage with you more and more. The harder stats that come back about engagement and retention, et cetera, they'll come in time. But that soft data about your relationship and your expertise, Vanessa, I think that's what's bringing them back into your focus again
Yeah,
already. And I think that's another thing for you to be incredibly proud of.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. I think it's the also what gives me a lot of reward is when the leadership, right? They
Mm.
start, like I had this experience where the CEO of a very traditional company
Mm.
was explaining the work that we've done to their marketing agency. Because
Mm.
obviously, I love working I collaborate with HR consultants and with marketing
Mm.
agencies.
Mm.
And just to sit there and hear him describe with such great articulation the work that we've done
Yeah.
really just made me say, okay, like all my spit was not for nothing, and that actually something was taken. Another episode was I had a client return. I hadn't heard from them for maybe 6 months,
Mm.
and they're thinking about 2025, and they were like, "We really want to work on our managers becoming ambassadors."
Wow.
So to me, it's clear that I'm not getting people telling me I want a social media campaign because they
Sure.
understand that they're not going to get value
Hmm.
yet
Hmm.
from
Hmm.
their social media campaign
Mm.
because their employer brand journey has just started.
Yeah. And it's interesting you brought 2025 in, and we're coming towards the end of the podcast, this episode. What I'd like to hear from you is what are you most excited about for next year for 2025, Vanessa?
Hmm. What am I most excited about?
Mm.
I think I have a couple of really, really great projects
Mm.
that go beyond employer branding in its, let's say, purest
Mm.
form.
Mm.
I have a really interesting internal communications project, and obviously I've done lots of that. So that
Yeah.
is kind of a lot of brain work, which I really like. I
Hmm.
also have a employee advocacy program that's going to focus on the managers.
Right.
So definitely I'm super excited for that. I'm
Hmm.
also super excited that I'll be running my accredited program for the second time because it got oversubscribed. So we had to
That's
run it
amazing.
again in
Amazing.
January. So I think from a work perspective, I'm definitely excited for that. Maybe on a personal, I am excited to continue trying to navigate this schedule with,
Hmm.
still doing some exercise and keeping up my singing.
Hmm.
I actually joined an opera program, which
Great.
is quite intense as
Hmm.
well. So it's nice to be able to have a kind of holistic approach to life. I love my work. I have a lot of fun
Mm.
with my work,
Mm.
but obviously singing does continue to give me something, and so does keeping myself healthy, I
I think
guess.
that's great. Listen, I've really enjoyed learning more about you and also about the expertise that you bring to all of your clients. And I hope sometime let's have a look. Let's fast forward towards the similar time, if not a bit earlier next year, that we get together again. So I'd love to hear more about your experience of your own journey and what you discovered about yourself. Can we agree on that?
Yes, 100%.
I'd love that. In the meantime, really great to see you today, Vanessa. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you, Kelly.